you, Joe. But scheduling and working out scripts and all that, that's not working. I mean, no, when we don't have anybody coming, not that we said we have to confess that this isn't working. But we'll talk about today about what I said we would talk about. It's on how you reconcile your Christian walk with having sex with other people, at a swing club. And we get this question a lot. Not as much directed to us as for themselves. You'd be surprised how many times couples particularly have said, we really want to do this. We think this would be good for our marriage, but we go to church and how it makes us, feel like we're hypocrites and we don't understand, how do you guys live with it? We've fielded that particular question more than any other. And so that's what I thought that I would talk about today. I'm glad you want to know. The problem is for you, of course, is swing clubs are not friendly to single males. What's a hard chat? And I didn't want to rehash my essays, because if I sat there and read one of my essays, it would take an hour. And you could read it on your own, which I think you already have. So what we do, I'll give you the short. Was he trying to convince you that your life wasn't going anywhere because of your beliefs? Or were you saying your life isn't going anywhere because of your beliefs? Oh, okay. Grave area about the idea of sex being something that's open to other people? Or is it about the idea of family members? Because those are two different things. Oh, yeah. And the fact that she would include nudism in there tells you that, she's not open. You got to get past the nudity before you can ever talk about sex. And it's because that's what she's been taught. Yeah. That's what she's been taught. It's hard for people until they're willing to consider that they've been lied to. And that's a hard concept. A lot of people have a lot invested in their social group. And as you know, that if you start questioning the rules of your social group, you risk being thrown out. And the truth is, most people will not take that risk. They won't consider they might be wrong because the price is so high just being willing to ask. Well, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. I was taught, very, this is in the 60s and 70s. You don't believe anything authority figures say just because they say it. Doesn't mean you don't believe it because they say it. Okay, that's something different. But you always have an obligation, and this is very true, that you have an obligation to verify what the leaders tell you is true. And then you take the bias that leadership in organizations have a vested interest in keeping things the way they are. It's, all organizations, and this is not a conspiracy, all organizations are self-interested. And those people with leadership within those organizations do not want change. That's why, I was just responding to a Facebook post today, and they see it as hypocrisy that, these big companies are saying that, we're going to not support this person or that person or this cause or that cause, because they too do the same thing. And that's true, because they might believe in equality, but those top executives aren't about to jeopardize their careers so that they expand the pool of people who could take their job. I mean, if you're already up here and you know that one of the reasons you're up here is because you're a white male and you went to Harvard, you do not want to expand the pool down here of people vying for your job beyond other white males who went to Harvard, because that's a little tiny group. If you expand it to women, to other racial groups, to other, ethnic groups beyond just, white and black, you start getting a lot more competition. And it comes right down to it. People it's a lot easier to say somebody else should be just than being just to your own cost. Very few people are willing to pay a price for justice that affects themselves, which is, of course, why they have to be pushed. And they have to be twisted. Their arm has to be twisted till they realize that it is in their interest to broaden those pools below. And so what you see a lot in corporate America is the senior corporate leaders will broaden the opportunities way down here because they know these people will never threaten their job. But the higher you get, the less they're willing to broaden the applicants beyond, white males from prestigious universities, because they don't want anyone threatening them personally. They don't mind the assistant manager being threatened by more people. They don't mind even the district manager being threatened by more people. But when it gets up into what they call the corner office, they don't want those people threatening them. And the same is true in churches and Christian organizations. If you look at evangelical Christianity, it is totally controlled by white males. And there's a little bit of diversity based on denomination, but in the end, they're the same people across the board. They do not want to expand to other ideas and other kind of people who might bring other ideas. And they write it off, of course, as, we want to be true to the truth. That's right. They're threatening the establishment. Yep, that's exactly right. They don't mind you threatening principles that threaten lower people, but they cannot threaten themselves in any sort of fundamental change. And modern evangelical Christianity is built on sexual issues. I mean, if you look at what they fight for, when is the last time you heard the moral majority, that's not the right word now, but the political Christians ever talk about greed or selfishness? They never do, because, well, that's a sin they like. They only talk about sexual sins that they either don't want to do or they don't think they'll get caught doing. That's one of the things that, if you're smart and you're rich, it's easy to hide the fact that you're not monogamous, that you cheat on your wife. And it happens all the time, but they could preach against it because people don't know about it. Yep, you're right. You narrow down evangelicalism. And that's why when we talk about, again, this is our topic. It's how do I rectify the idea that I'm at a swing club and that I might have sex with a lady that I just met, or Paula and I might have a foursome with another couple. And, how just for fun, just because these people I enjoy being with. It's in a swinger resort is different than a swing club. In a swing club, it's almost like it's like a junior high dance, and I don't particularly like them for that reason. It's you're like trying out. But at a resort, you get to know the same people all the time, and you get friendships. And in our vision of the world, sex is something that friends naturally do. Adult friends have sex with each other because that's sharing joy and pleasure. No different than going to a movie or going bowling. So we've expanded the idea of what Christianity means. Christianity in the public sphere is all about sexual repression. Being sex negative is the definition of Christianity in the larger community. And so one of the first things we often talk about is we'll ask them, what does it mean? Hi, Jonathan Turtle. What does it mean if we step out and what is adultery? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. We ask them, when the Bible says don't commit adultery, what does that mean? And we bring up the concept that they've never thought of, that adultery is the betrayal of the promises you made. We point out that in the Bible times, men who use prostitutes, married men using a prostitute, were not guilty of adultery. Most Christians don't realize that. In fact, what's interesting, the Mosaic Law very specifically says, if you use prostitutes, don't use prostitutes that are children of Israel. Use foreigners as prostitutes. So there was just an assumption that married men were going to have sex with women other than them who they're married to. Yeah. So the first thing we've got to do is question what they've been taught. And you should see the eyes, when their eyes get big, like, wow, I never thought about that before. And then we point out, for instance, when we talk about adultery, that single people could not commit adultery. That's only sex with somebody other than who you're married to if you're a woman. See, it only meant women are not allowed to have sex with men other than their husband. That's what adultery meant. But when we take the Christian position of equality between the sexes, that is wiped away because the reason for that was ownership. The man owned the woman's vagina. He owned all of her, but he owned her vagina. Adultery was theft. You remember the famous Frederick Douglass quote. He used to get up and said, "I am a thief." And he started stuff. "I am a thief because I stole this body. I stole this body from its rightful owner," referring to his own body. Okay, so when we move into the New Testament model, people don't own each other. That's what we saw in Philemon. What's interesting, my wife the other day, she had never heard any preacher. She grew up in church, in conservative Southern churches. She had never, ever heard of the book of Philemon, where it says you can't own Christian slaves. Hang on. Oh, yeah, that's even, see, again, because you're right. Men had not just legal wives, they had concubines, which were mistresses. There was never any concept that men were expected to be monogamous. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. When Jesus first said that if men, that you too, if you cheat on your wife, you're committing adultery, that was a new concept. All right. That was blowing them away. How dare you say that a man can't have a prostitute? that didn't make him very popular. Yeah. So when we apply the Christian model of non-ownership, then my wife's body belongs to herself, not to me, as mine. Now, I also belong to her. We belong to each other in a sense of I try to do for her and she tries to do for me. So that non-monogamy must be negotiated and agreed upon, okay? If an example that I may have written on, okay, here's what cheating means. Okay, if I'm in school and I bring a crib sheet and I have the answers written on it, that's cheating. But if the teacher says it's an open book test, am I cheating by opening the book? No. So we use that analogy, that if my wife and I agree to these parameters, then we are not betraying our oaths to one another. We are not committing adultery, cheating, as long as we stick within those boundaries. And every couple works out different things. A great many couples with open marriages have an agreement that they only have sex with other people when their spouse is present. And if they go and have sex with somebody when their spouse isn't present, then that becomes adultery because you are violating the vow. All right. So, and we've gone through different stages. And at this point, for the last 10 years, we both have an agreement that we are free to have sex with whoever we choose, whenever we choose. There's not necessarily an obligation to tell the spouse about it, because it's not any more important to enjoy a dinner with a friend as enjoying sex with the friend. It's all the same. If she goes out with one of her friends, it's not any different whether or not they have sex. Not so much sense, but wow, people, yes, they do refuse to hear it. Because that's admitting they were wrong. And one of the things that we know about Christians is they don't like admitting they're wrong. Do this. You try to get a conservative Christian to admit that conservative Christianity was 100% behind racial segregation, which it was. You can find on the internet still big people carrying signs that integration is of the devil. God will judge integration. They were as committed to racial integration as they are now to fighting homosexuality. In fact, what had happened was they went directly from racial integration as their cause. They lost that, and they immediately adopted the Catholic position on abortion. You will not find evangelicals talking about abortion prior to the point that they lost the battle on segregation. They as a whole, and it was planned, there was actually a meeting with Jerry Falwell and his group, and they put on the table what should be our new issue. And the new issue was abortion, because they needed an issue. So they didn't have a problem with adopting the Catholic position because they're not that interested in the Bible. What they do is they turn the Bible to fit what they want, right? So back to what the whole topic here is. How do we reconcile it? Well, first, we recognize what adultery meant. The other word that is also thrown out there is fornication. And perhaps both of you realize this, but fornication had a specific meaning, and it meant sex with prostitutes. And in the New Testament era, it was more specific. In the Greek, it very specifically meant sex with temple prostitutes, which is why when Paul said, "Why should I join my body with Belial?" Why should I join with the lost? Because he was saying, I won't commit a fornication. I won't go have sex with a temple prostitute because I shouldn't worship their gods. And by putting my penis inside the temple prostitute, I am in effect worshiping their God. And that's what Paul was condemning. And his readers the people who got in Corinth got that letter, they knew exactly what that meant. Just like all the verses that talk about that God is the groom and the church is the bride, and he injects the Holy Spirit into us. That meant ejaculates. The vision was the groom having sex with the bride and ejaculating. Everybody who read that in the first century knew exactly what that meant, because they wouldn't find that offensive. But it was much later that we found this offensive. Yes, they tried it to mean anything they want. Because in the end, here's the sad truth about religion. All religion, not just Christianity. Large organized religion is in the business of self-preservation more than anything else. And as it moves into new places, it adopts whatever the locals believe. That's why South American Catholicism looks very different than Italian Catholicism. And Italian Catholicism looks different than Greek Catholicism or Greek Orthodox. The rose-tinted prude, yeah. Because it comes down to what they already believe. And you got to say something about the prudism, okay? The prudism is only in public. All right, I can tell you, I'm from the Deep South. My wife is from the right kind of family. Her grandfather owned a giant 20th century plantation. He was, fought against segregation, shoulder to shoulder with his buddy, who was his good buddy, Jesse Helms. Okay, this guy was an ardent segregationist, and her family and their money goes back to goes back to the King of England. And so slavery was part of their world. Then Jim Crow, when slavery was wiped away, they had to create a whole new theology to justify Jim Crow. Because again, maybe you don't know this, maybe you do, that Christians, when Christianity took over Europe, one of the hallmarks was Christians couldn't take Christian slaves. And that was true in Europe for 1,500 years. It wasn't until then, when they captured the Africans, the reason they brought Africans is they weren't Christians. But when the Africans they brought to America became Christians, they had to change their theology. They couldn't give up their slaves, so they just changed what they believed the Bible said. I told my friend notice what she said, Joe, that it is men are lusting. See, she's got it ingrained the way this works. She doesn't want to talk about the text. She quotes the things that she's been told. And that is true for virtually everybody. It's not just unique on conservative Christians. I saw this when I was working on my PhD at Clemson. My first semester, I remember there's one particular young lady who was very bright. I actually became good friends with her. And she could, the first time in class, and she would, we would have discussions, because at the doctoral level, it's mostly discussion. And she would quote these things, and it sounded that she was really knowledgeable. But over the next 3 years, because she left after my third year because she graduated and got a job at another university, I realized that she wasn't any different than the people at Bob Jones, right-wing Christians, in that she had a list of memorized answers that she plugged in every case. She didn't actually look for the truth. She looked to use her memorized answers to fit. So when your friend quotes it that way, she's giving you the memorized answer she's been given. She hasn't looked in the Bible for herself. She goes to the Bible to confirm what she already believes. The way I changed where I was believing, let's see, let me look at my little thing here. Hang on. Oh, okay. This was my first step into being a heretic. Okay, let's see if I can get it to say up. Now you can't read it. The lights are too bright. It says clothing in the Christian. And I did this study. My wife asked me to do this decades ago. And what happened? She wanted to know, and her original question was, pages and pages and pages, was, we're taught that girls shouldn't wear pants and they shouldn't wear shorts and they shouldn't go swimming with men. You've heard all that, haven't you? You're right. If you stay in the little box, it's okay to believe a lie because everybody else believes the lie. If you choose truth rather than lies, you're going to get in trouble. Truth always gets you in trouble. So my wife asked me, what does the Bible really tell us about clothing? Because we were told, men should not wear women's clothing and women shouldn't wear men's clothing. That means they shouldn't wear pants. I'm sure you've heard that. So she has to do a Bible study on clothing in the Christian. So I spent a year amassing this big old, there we go, look at that, all the evidence. Studied all the, not just the Bible, but then I went into the culture so that I understood what the Bible meant when it was talking and what were the references they were talking to. And I wasn't looking for this answer, but in the end, I essentially came to the nudist position that the Bible doesn't say anything about showing the human body. In fact, in Egypt, the house slaves typically went nude. Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to go into naturism. That wasn't my point. I was just seeing what the Bible, what the teaching was and what it meant. And then I realized that, wow, Moses, who knew this is how these people dressed, never said a word about it. He never talked about exposing the human body, not once. Why? Because it wasn't an issue. Nudity wasn't an issue. It was a cultural norm among certain groups. But if you remember in the Exodus, it was a mixed multitude. It wasn't just Hebrews. We forget that what became the nation of Israel weren't just the children of Israel. They were a whole bunch of other people that came out with them and then became one single body. And that one body became the Jews. But they weren't just the children of Israel per se. It was a mixed multitude. The Bible tells us that. So they had multiple customs. And he didn't talk about any of it. Nothing. And then I kept going, and I realized that all the baptisms were done in the first 3 centuries in the nude, never of children. They were always adults. They didn't baptize children. That was an adult decision. We baptize 5 and 6-year-olds today. They never would have done that in the first century. Yeah, what happened was, it was really actually funny. The reason they stopped were the pagan leaders came to the Christian community and said, can you stop doing public baptisms because it creates a big mess? Because all of the young men, they sit on the hills and they all fight trying to get to see the naked women. So the pagans are the ones that ask them to go indoors with their baptism. It wasn't until later that they changed, they started. Because what they did is they went in, they took off all their clothes, got completely nude, went in, were baptized, and came back, and the church gave them a new set of clothes. And it was from that analogy that we are putting off the old life, and we are now something new. And clothing was very expensive. So they gave away the old clothes, and they had the new ones as a symbol of they were a new person. And so, yeah, it was really funny. Our rules on prudery, they predate Christianity, and you might want to look into that. Augustus actually started rules against having sex outside of marriage. Are you aware of that? Were either of you aware of that? It was Augustus. when Jesus was either not born or a child. I haven't looked at the exact timeline, and here's why. Same thing you're hearing from the white supremacists today. He was concerned that those foreigners were having more babies than the Romans. And the foreigners, of course, that meant my ancestors, the Germans and the Celts, who they had taken into slavery. But in that world, very few people stayed in slavery their whole life. They came out of slavery and they were, so they were having way too many freedmen is the word for it. They weren't citizens, they were freedmen because they weren't Italian. And they were having too many of those and not enough natural Italian kids. And he didn't really worry that much about the lower classes. The patricians were shrinking because they were only having one kid apiece so that they could inherit very narrowly. They had sex with all these other people, but with their legal wife, they weren't having children. So Augustus passed laws saying you can only have sex with your wife. You can't have sex with prostitutes. You can't have sex with other men. If you want to have sex, you got to have sex with your wife, because he was trying to cause there to be more patrician babies born. Did that work? No. But that was the origin of the Christians when they then adopted the Roman Church adopted Christianity. They took on that cause as a way to say, we're not like the pagans. We're adopting close, good morals like Augustus taught, not as Jesus taught, as Augustus taught. So you need to look it up. But I learned all that. And so I found that adultery and fornication simply didn't mean the things that the preachers that I've heard taught me. The word is lie. Now, to be fair, those preachers believed their lies because that's what they were told. And that's what their teachers were told. It has become church tradition. And what is the difference between Catholicism, the primary difference between Catholicism and Protestants? What is it? The root difference. Who can tell me? Come on, I'm playing teacher here. Oh, I guess this isn't fast enough to do that, is it? Oh, well. The root difference is the authority of the Bible versus the authority of church tradition. Yes, that's right, church authority. Catholicism teaches that the Bible's good, but the final authority is church tradition, what we've always done, which, of course, is interpreted by the cardinals and the Pope. But the idea that we do it because that's what everybody else has done, this is who we are as a people. And there's merit in that in a sociological sense, okay? In a sociological sense, that it creates group identity, which is the reason why the Mosaic Law was given, is to create group identity. All those silly laws, they were to create group identity. It's a good, effective program. Exactly. You hit it on the head. So what has happened is, even though we look at Martin Luther, we look at Savonarola, or even Savonarola before him, Zwingli, you go through the great reformers. They all said the same thing. Let's get rid of the tradition. The Hussites, Huss himself, and the Hussites died by the tens of thousands, saying, we don't do things because we've always done it. We do it because the Bible says. But yet, modern evangelicalism is not built on the Bible, no matter how much they say it is. It is built on tradition. This is what we've always believed. Therefore, we're going to keep believing it, and we will not consider anything else. I am drifting. I'm sorry. I have way drifted away. But that is actually my next point was exactly that. If somebody asks me, they say, how do you do this? We say, we ask them, what does it mean to be Christian? And sometimes they look at me like I'm crazy. Because they'll say, well, got to be saved. What is that? What is the sign that you're saved? I can tell you, I was good at this. The sinner's prayer does not make you a Christian. I can promise you. I got very good at it when I was your age, Joe. I actually had a little New Testament, and I put a little marks for all the people that I had led through the sinner's prayer. I was good at it. And then one day, when I'm actually studying the teachings of Jesus, I realized I was a salesman, not an evangelist. I was selling them on closing the sale so that they would say what I said. But saying the words and meaning it here and truly understanding that I am giving over my life from my selfish desires and receiving the gift of salvation, those are two totally different things. So I was really, really good at getting people to pray the sinner's prayer. But I wasn't very good at getting to creating disciples of Christ. See? And how do you know someone's a disciple of Christ? Well, Jesus told us. He gave us a parable about it. He said, love God and show your love for God by loving your neighbor. And specifically, loving your neighbor that's in trouble. The poor, the needy, and the orphans, and the widows. You show my love to those people, and that shows that you actually have been born again. And then he gives the story of the Good Samaritan. And he points out that the religious people, the good Baptist, they walk by and turn their nose up at the guy in trouble because, well, he must be a sinner or he wouldn't have been, attacked. He must be a sinner or he wouldn't have gotten AIDS. He must be a sinner or he wouldn't be poor. That's what they're saying now. They're poor because they're lazy and they're sinful. So that's them. And it was the Samaritan who didn't live by the Mosaic law, who they considered apostates, who actually walks with God. He was the only one that was a true Christian. That was the parable. And it's like you never hear it. They don't want to talk about that because they want to talk about abortion. They want to talk about homosexuality. They want to talk about all those sinners. And now they're talking about how evil Black Lives Matter is again. They're back to the racism. So we have to reframe what it means to be Christian. Of course it's hard. Gee whiz, Joe. Of course it's hard. It's never going to be easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it. Why do you think we're told that we have to crucify ourselves? Because that isn't what we want to do. We want to do what's good for us. Okay? We'll never win that fight, but we can try. And that's all we can do. All right? The Good Samaritan was the Christ figure. We're not but we can try. That's all we can do is try. And so we reframe what it means to be Christian and then say, if Christianity is showing love for my neighbor and showing concern and bringing happiness to others. I always think of this girl I knew in college. Her name was Tammy. And she was kind of dumpy and she didn't have a boyfriend because, well, she didn't look like the kind of girl that anybody wants to date. But she went through life, I guess by design, but she made everybody feel better when she was around them. She brought everybody up. Now, nobody was asking her for a date, but everybody liked to be around her because she brought joy. That was her gift, the ability to bring joy, and she spread it everywhere. Well, people are hurting all over. I think of my good friend Ivy. When Ivy and I have spent a couple of hours in the bed, and she's passed out because she had so many orgasms. Not that I'm patting myself on the back. That's what she does. But she is happy for several days, a week or so afterward. I bring happiness via sex. I use that. Now, I could bring unhappiness too. I mean, a lot of men, women too, but a lot of people bring unhappiness for sex. They use sex to tear people down, to show control. All right. If I show something different, and we've fought this battle in public at not, fight, but we've seen it important to show Christian sexuality in public arenas so that we challenge the idea that women are there for men to have sex with. There are those men who at a swing club or at a swing resort, and I've watched it. I remember this one particular day, this lady, and she was reasonably attractive, not beautiful, but there was the stud muffin, okay? The really attractive men at swing resorts are more busy sexually than any woman because the women line up to have sex with them. And Paula was no different. And so I watch him, and she and I were good friends, and we had made out and we'd messed around a little bit, but we hadn't had full sex. But I watched him one day. He decided he wanted to nail her. And it was actually a day. It was an evening. It was at a party. And at swing resort, unlike swing clubs, people go off and have sex and then come back and rejoin the party. Swing clubs, that really doesn't happen, which is interesting. So I watch him, and of course, when he wants her attention, he takes it away from me immediately. But that's okay. I understand the score. He is really good looking and was really well hung, and he liked showing it off. And sure enough, in 30 minutes, he took her down to the playroom for them to have sex. They came back another half an hour later, and he ignored her entirely. He showed her that her whole value was a conquest. The moment he stuck his dick in her and he came, he was done with her, because that's all she was there for, is to get him off and to make him feel good about himself. Well, that's not Christian sexuality. Christian sexuality is, if I do have sex, and in fact, I later did have sex with her, but then I make a point the next day and then the future to build her up and say, wow, that was great. That was thanks. We had a great time, and to treat her differently. Oh, well, of course it was. I have just a total thought, but I have a suspicion that Augustine of Hippo somehow wasn't able to perform anymore, and all of a sudden changed his mind, because there's nothing more angry about free sex than somebody who can't have it anymore. That's the old women who are really angry about young women who flaunt their sexuality, and I've been around those kind of women. How dare she do that? That hussy. But if you were able to go back in time, they were no different when they were teenagers, but they can't anymore. And it's a reminder that they're old. It's a reminder that men don't want them the way they used to. And I'm at the age that Paul and I used to be able to have sex literally for hours. She would sit on top of me and we would talk. We would have devotions with me inside of her. I can't do that anymore. Boy, that would be nice if I could. But no, those days are long gone. But and sometimes I have to remind myself, I can't resent the fact that young people can still do what I used to be able to do. I have to remind that's their time. People in their 20s and 30s and even 40s, men, and there are men my age who can still fuck for hours. Okay. Yeah. Paula had a boyfriend who was in his 70s and he could screw all night long. Now, of course, I do get a little jealous of that, but I have to tell myself, yeah, yep, you're right, Jonathan. So yeah, I have to remind myself that, hey, I'm not sure I would want to be like that, because the one thing about guys who are always hard all the time, it is really hard for them to focus on other things, and they have a much harder time not using people. So, there's a trade-off. It's easier for me to do other things, to write and to make my 3D. Did anybody get to see my update on the website with my new 3D art? But yes, it's wrong. So when I present to them the idea of a new vision of Christianity, that I can use my penis with other women and on occasion other men in a way that builds them up, I'm setting a good example for what a Christian is. See, I'm encouraging to say Christianity is something I want. This way of life of caring about others, that's something that's appealing. And now we're going to I want to say something. I know it's still oddly not popular. In the world of Trumpist Christianity, selfishness and Christianity have become one and the same. The idea of real Christianity has been completely pushed to the side. The larger, the non-Christian world sees Christianity as hateful and evil and selfish, because the Christians have adopted not just Trump himself, but his value system. And I see it all the time on Facebook with my conservative Christian friends I have known for decades. There's one lady I know that she is was a wonderful lady. And she was a great example of a Christian. But as she has become more and more committed to Trumpism, she has become more bitter and angry and selfish, and she has completely lost sight of actual Christianity. We all struggle with selfishness. I promise you, Joe. That is something the only difference between you and other people is that you're aware of it. When I was an employer, and I was an employer for a long time, social workers and teachers and whatnot in my organizations, what I found was if there was something going on that was wrong, okay, let's say their service notes, we had to write service notes every week. And if that wasn't being done right, and so I would be in a group meeting and I would say, hey guys, we are not doing our service notes the right way. You guys, you have to do it this way. I know it takes more time, but it has to be done. We cannot cut corners. Guess who would be the one coming to me and say, oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, please help me do better. The people who wrote the best notes. The people who were already the most committed were always the ones that felt guilty. The people who wrote the bad notes, who's sloppy, and people who I was going to, was working hard to make them successful, they never saw I was talking to them. So yeah, if you're feeling like, oh, I'm struggling with selfishness, guess what? That probably means you're in the elite of the people who struggle with selfishness because you see it's there. Those who don't are are more selfish. They just don't see it. That's the reality of life. So in the age of Trumpist Christianity, the opportunity to use the free sex model, that we show love in all ways, that we are always allocentric is the technical word for it. There's egocentric and the opposite is allocentric. That's your vocabulary word of the day. Those people who are allocentric stand out as something different. And it gives us the opportunity to say what those people who are fighting to take away the civil rights of gay people, who are saying that we'd rather kids not to be adopted than to be adopted by a gay couple, okay? Those people do not represent what Christianity is. Though that's a false brand of Christianity just as much as the Borgia popes were false Christians, okay? The idea of a false Christianity being common is the norm. For the last 1,500, 1,600 years, the vast majority of people, of leaders who call themselves Christians, are not any such thing. And they never have been, and they never will be. And we have to know that. So we have to let people know we're something different. It's like in the Middle Ages when you had the Borgia popes, the local friar or the local parish priest working to help the poor and ignoring what his superiors say. Yeah, but you can be real shepherds, even in an environment where false shepherds are the norm. And there have always been real shepherds, but they've typically been those who aren't seeking anything for themselves. They don't climb in the organizations. They don't get radio talk shows because that's not what they're trying to do. They're down in the trenches helping those who need it. When I was working in the public schools, one of the things I noticed, you always hear about teachers of the year. The best teachers never got to be teacher of the year. Why? Because those teachers are the ones who didn't care if they got recognition. They focus on the needs of their students, particularly the neediest. And the reason I know this is because of my position as an educational social worker was that I went in and out of classrooms all the time. I saw the teachers, but they didn't see me because I wasn't in their chain of command. Because what happened, and I'd seen it happen, if the principal was with me, they acted totally different. They put on the dog and pony show. Those people became the teachers of the year. I watched them in the lunchroom and the conferences so that they suck up to everybody. But the teachers who just put their nose to the grindstone and said, I'm going to work for the neediest kids, they never got recognition, and they're not going to. They don't become superintendents. Okay, you don't promote in an organization like that, and you don't promote in Christianity and in the organization by putting others' needs first. You promote and become famous and look to, as and you get your radio talk show and your books by being self-centered. Self-centered is the way you get that, because it has to be a priority. And I went one day with my mother-in-law to her little Baptist church. She kind of went sometimes. And she was in her 90s by then. And it was a church, and I looked around, and that church was filled with people. I guess there were probably 5 people under 65 out of the 120, a little congregation. They were elderly people, and that minister had been there for decades, serving those elderly people who nobody cared about. And guess what? He's never going to become the president of the Southern Baptist Convention. But you know what? That's not what Christianity is. It's not becoming the president of the Southern Baptist Convention. It is serving the elderly people who can't give anything back. And I'm sure he didn't make much money. But he wasn't out to try to build a giant church. He was there to serve those who needed serving. Yeah. But we do it. We do it. And so all I'd say is we can present at a swing club, at a swinger resort, at a hotel party. When we're in the open marriage community, like Paula said the other day, I have a hard time keeping with names. We've never considered ourselves swingers because it has a selfish connotation. We say, hey, we have an open marriage and a polyamory type open marriage, but we don't claim to be swingers simply because we don't like what it's associated with. Wife swapping as if they're property. I'm switching cars or switching wives. So it gives us the opportunity to show we're different. In a way, it will stand up. I had a meme that I like. I haven't posted in a long time. And it has a woman with cum on her shirt and on the corner of her mouth. And she says, now do you believe I'm not that kind of Christian? And sometimes we have to really shock their boots off. So, Joe, don't worry about what this person who doesn't want to be an actual follower of Christ, she wants to be a popular Christian. There's out there thousands of women who are in desperate need of somebody caring about them. The needs of single women is enormous. And if you take the attitude as I'm there to make women feel good about themselves, you will have no trouble finding mates. Okay? Women will line up at your door because there are so few men that are committed that way. And when you go to bed, your focus is ensuring that they have a good time. Not just physically, but emotionally. That when the next day they can look back and say, wow, I really feel good about myself after being with Joe last night. You think you're going to get a second date? Oh, yeah. Now, you have to, and I know, Joe, this is hard for you, but you have to be in a position where you see where these needy women are. But they're everywhere. You would be shocked how lonely and sad women are today. But if you seek to be a real Christian and then a relationship becomes as a byproduct, you're okay. Now, but you got to keep your eye on, I seek to serve, not I seek something for myself. You will get for yourself as a byproduct. It's hard saying of Jesus. What's my favorite ice cream? I like my favorite, Blue Bunny. I don't know if you have it in your area. Blue Bunny mint, sugar-free mint chocolate chip. I'm diabetic, so I can't eat normal ice cream. I can only eat the sugar-free. Now, we get Breyers because it's pretty good, but I can't find it anymore. I used to be able to get this stuff, and it was so yummy. Oh, I love it. But normally I eat Breyers butter pecan sugar-free, or it's no sugar added because, milk has sugar in it. So they can't say sugar-free, but it's no sugar added. Glad that you're here, John. So it's 6 o'clock. So I'm sorry I yacked too long. I was going to give more questions. If you have questions, go to the website on the forum. That would be the best. I would love to get. We're not getting any thread starts. Please, if y'all can think of getting the time to start some threads. Oh, hi, Hiram. Get some threads. We got 5 people. Wonderful. Okay, so we will be back. We were considering, if we only had Joe here today, we were going to discontinue, but we won't. Paula and I will be back on Wednesday night. She and I do Wednesdays together. She's decided that she's not going to kick me out anymore. She liked the format where we were talking together better than just her alone, so we'll be doing that together. And then next Sunday, whatever, I'll repost whatever I put it will be the topic for next Sunday. If you have topics you would like to talk about, please let me know. Before I go, let me ask, has anybody had a chance to check out the update on the website, the Liberum Sextus website, and tell me if my 3D stories are working? They seem to be working for me, but sometimes things don't work on other people's tools. Has anybody been a chance to see that? If you have, just let me know later. I'm working. I hope to be able to get chapter 2 of my great novel done, but each frame takes 2 hours to render. And like yesterday, I had to render the same frame 3 times because of mistakes. I had some lighting issues. So it doesn't come fast. Okie dokie. Well, you guys have a great night. Hope to hear from you again. But like I said, if we could start some threads on the forum, that would be good, because I think there are more people who would love to talk, but they're not starting threads. So, and I don't want to do it myself because I don't want it to look like I'm driving things. All right. Have a great night. Bye. End stream. End.